fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
All right, Salt Strong Nation, we are back. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We've got Luke Simons, Tony Acevedo, Mark the Shark Goodson, and guys, we're going to be talking about perhaps one of the most controversial topics that we have ever talked about on this show, and I'm talking about bait casting reels versus spinning reels. This is going to be a good one. We did the whole line debate, got a ton of feedback, and now we're going to talk about reels. Funny story, I was checking our Instagram messages here recently, and this young man had said, "Hey, how come you guys don't use, casting reels very much on your channel?" We have done a couple times, but for the most part, it's spinning. And I was just nice back to him. I said, "Well, do you mind telling me why you use casting reels?" And he basically just said, "Because it makes me feel more like a man." But he didn't have a real good answer. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's an honest answer. That's a good honest answer.
It's a very honest answer. He was from Texas, so I get it. I lived in Texas for a while. Very proud state. I was there for almost 5 years. So I get it. Texans, they like to do things the hard way sometimes, to say I'm more manly. In all honesty, there are some pros and cons to both. There is no perfect answer. I'm hoping, however, we do come up with a champion, a winner, by the end of this. And we have Mark, who is an ex-bass fishing pro, and so that guy probably struggled the most going from casting to spinning. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of feedback on that, and Tony as well. All of us really came from bass fishing first, but I know Mark probably had the toughest transition with it, and probably has the most feedback as an adult. So guys, let's get into it. Who wants to start it off?
Who's ready to convert?
So
what?
Yeah, what do you call yourself, Mark?
The fairy sticks to a man reel.
Fly rods are fairy
sticks. What do you call fly reel? Fly rod.
We don't even talk about fly in my business.
Yeah, so I was like that for years. I was like that dude that Joe mentioned, where I literally thought spinning reels and rods were for chumps. Like I just thought it was for people who couldn't throw bait casting, and now I'm kicking myself for like dismissing spinning setups for so long. I think the change happened as far as effectiveness once braid was introduced, as far as just castability. And it's like now I'm like total reverse, where I had 0 spinning outfits, and the ones I had were the ones when I was a kid. And now the only bait casting rods, except for one, I just got a new one recently, are just from when I was a kid, like when I was like in the low teens. I've totally switched to spinning. I just think they're more effective for the fishing I do.
Can you clarify on that?
Just spinning. I'm using, in most cases, pretty light lures, right? Like a 3-inch soft plastic, a 3 to 5-inch soft plastic on a weighted hook for fishing shallow water, where casting distance is everything. The only fish using artificial lures, which I do, the only fish I can catch are the fish in between me and however far I can cast. So every foot extra distance I can get, all the better. And I'm often fishing open flats. So unlike bait casting, it doesn't matter if I'm punching into the wind or anything. I can know that I'm not going to get one of those frustrating backlashes. But also, more importantly, is I feel like I can cast further with less effort with spinning setups. A 7.6 spinning rod with 10-pound braid can sling light lures into the wind, with the wind, whatever. In my opinion, better than a bait caster.
Ooh,
so that's
Mark,
what totally switch.
What do you say to that, dude?
Yeah, well, some of us a long time ago when we were kids learned how to set our magnets properly on bait casting reels. So no, I'll give it to Luke. The light platform of lures in our industry, it's difficult with bait casting. There's no doubt. I would say right off the bat, and we'll go ahead and get it off the back. Where bait casting fails, in my opinion, is anytime you're trying to skip under docks or get really, really low to the water column and getting something to glide across the surface. It takes a lot of practice to do that. Not the easiest method to do so, and also casting very, very light baits. Outside of that, I'll go against Luke on anything.
Well, Luke mentioned distance. What about the distance piece of it?
To me, it's like spinning. When you have the right rod and reel, the balance, the concept, the design of everything, it's no different in the bait casting. I think what most people try to do is get the heaviest outfit instead of getting the best outfit. So there are certainly very, very capable casting rods that will pair with a casting reel that will get just as far on a cast, if not further sometimes, if it's set up properly. So I would say that once you get to that 1/4 ounce level of lure, man, a casting can absolutely launch a product. It's 1/4 ounce and less that they kind of, they have a little bit of an issue with.
But so I thought that too. I believe, and I'm still on the fence, but I thought that too. But I was throwing this bigger skitter walk, and I don't know what the weight is of it, but it's like, it's the bigger size one. Yep. And I bought a bait casting because I wanted to throw a little bit bigger plug. And so I was launching, or I was like, it was kind of fun again. I haven't thrown a bait caster in a while. I was catching some fish with it. And then I decided, let me just put this, and I have a bait caster. I'll pull it. I can't remember what brand it is. It's a Quantum, I think it's Quantum Smoke. Is that right? Yeah, I got it from Southeastern.
Yeah.
So I put it on, that has 20-pound braid on it, the bait casting, and I put it on my spinning outfit. Bait cast is a 7-foot rod, 20-pound braid, Quantum Smoke reel.
You need 50-pound braid. That's part of the issue if you have a bait
That's
casting.
right.
Yeah, and so then I put this same lure on my normal rod, my normal spinning rod, which is a 7/6 rod, so it's a little bit longer rod. It's 10-pound line versus 20-pound line, and I was noticeably casting it further with spinning relative to bait casting, and that's like the heavier plugs that I thought was going to put the bait casting in the advantage, and it was without a doubt casting much further with spinning. So I'm now not sold on that premise. I haven't done a test or anything, and I don't think I should, because I think it would be interesting to do a test on someone who does a lot of bait casting and throw in like a big plug like this, and then someone does a lot of spinning, just to see for certain. But for me personally, I was launching it way further with spinning. But I have to have lighter line for that. So if I wanted to like power fish a big, fishing docks or something, that probably wouldn't be smart. But that's what I've seen. The spinning does launch the heavier lures too.
So something that I've noticed, I've used a bait caster using a topwater, but I was using 10-pound braid, and it launched it much further. However, what I noticed is with the bait casters, you don't want to go too light on your line. You want to focus more on diameter of the line rather than the pound test with bait casters, because if you go really narrow, really thin on bait casters, it's hard to manage that line. It'll dig into your spool. You get a backlash, and good luck getting that out. If you use like 20, 30 pound, that's about the equivalent of, what would you say, Mark? 12 pound mono?
Probably less.
Yeah, it's a lot less. Yeah.
Still less, yeah. I really wouldn't put any less than 20 or 30 pound on a bait caster. But then, that line's going to be thicker, so it's going to catch the wind. You may see some effects with casting distance that way.
I think, though, the two pros on a bait caster that I feel are much better than a spinning is, number one, the accuracy on cast with bait casters, in my opinion, are far superior. And number two, the fatigue. When you have that much weight out in front of you on a spinning versus you being able to tuck it to your chest on a bait casting, I'm telling you, I can feel a difference between a 3,000 class reel and a bait casting combo. Drastic difference.
True.
Yeah. I think the biggest need for bait casting is like the people who pitch baits, like for like a lot of bass angling where it's short pitches, like an underhand. I agree that the control is much better because you have your thumb on there, and for like a short pitch, that's really efficient. I still think for like I feel more. I probably it's whatever I use more, but I feel way more comfortable doing accurate casts with spinning compared to bait casting, even though I got forced myself to use bait casting for like a week or two, and it was getting more and more comfortable, but I still wasn't anywhere near as comfortable as far as making accurate casts with that bait caster.
Mark, why would it be more accurate? Is it because you don't have with the casting, you don't have that line spinning off, and it's a little bit closer to the rod, or what's the reason?
Yeah, so to me, like whenever you try to cast at something with a spinning, Joe, whenever you're loading and unloading that rod, to change how fast that's going off, you kind of have to spool it and try to restrict the flow of the line to try to slow that lure down. It's all
for the record. I have never tried to slow a cast down. Okay.
So
I grip it and rip it, baby.
Like
right into the mangrove trees.
Yeah.
Right in there.
I'd rather catch a tree than have to stop the spool.
Yeah, that's the wrong color for squirrels, bud. The bottom, that's one of the beautiful things about bait casting reels is you get to thumb the spool much more efficiently. And if you throw it to a mangrove line, throw it to a dock or any kind of freshwater structure, you can really control how fast and how far that lure goes based on your thumb. And it's much harder to do so on a spinning. You have to use your whole other hand to restrict that line flow to really, reduce the speed of that launch.
Cool. Real quick, I want to give Cody Self a big shout out. Being seems to be one of the first people to get on these live calls every time. Cody, you the man. And just so you guys all are aware, Gregory Ramco is on this live call again, and he actually put in a legit question.
It's a surprise. It's a serious question.
What do you guys think about the Abu Garcia Riva 4-incher baitcaster?
Greg, are you feeling okay today, Gregory?
Greg, are you okay? And we got Wyatt just shut. I was like, why isn't Wyatt here? What are you doing? You got your is that a V-neck?
No, not a V-neck. I have
okay,
some issues with my my internet. I've got an awesome video coming out for the Salt Strong Nation, and I think the exporting took up a lot of problems. So I just got on my phone on cellular data, but I'm here now, and I'm ready to talk about some spinning reels.
Spinning? No, this is the bait casting section.
And Tyler, stop laughing at Cody. I see you down there. Tyler Simmons, very close to Simons, very close, but, missing the D and an extra M. We forgive you.
So what was the name? I'm not even familiar with that. We need to answer Greg. Greg.
Yeah,
Greg
so he was asking about the Abu Garcia products. I'll just say this, and I'll keep it PG. When Pure Fishing purchased Abu Garcia, I started to see some of the product line itself starting to do a downward spiral because they were trying to make it more price driven based on the platform versus quality driven. The company itself drastically has changed since the European made product back in the day to today's standard. I don't like a lot of plastic in my bait casters, and Abu Garcia has started to put quite a bit in there. There are some Abu Garcias that are on level with the price points that they belong to. The one that you just mentioned, I would say, is a good all-around reel. Still, in my opinion, there are much better reels in the same platform and pricing than what you just named.
So here's the one I have marked. It's the Smoke, the Quantum Smoke S something.
Yeah, it's a S3.
S3, yeah.
I see you're sporting your braid on there. Looks good.
Always got to be sporting the braid, Joe. And it's a new lure. I just got a little popper lure. I don't do popping lures very often. And this is lighter, and I couldn't cast it worth a darn. They're way better with spinning, by the way.
Yeah.
You got treble hooks on there, too. Otis is going to have a
Yeah, well, I haven't taken on the boat yet. I'm going to replace the trebles with singles before I actually use it. I just went on the dock to cast it and wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I think where bait casting kind of struggles, Luke, is, some of the hollow based lures, stuff that doesn't have a lot of weighted or perimeter weighted product. And also where I think bait casting struggles is anything that's really flat-sided baits, because it has a tendency to really plane with the air on a hard launch. So, the lures do, in fact, play a role in it. But I'll have to take you out in my boat. I still think that the accuracy with cast, underhanded, overhanded, side-handed, is still easier to control than it would be with the spinning.
In addition to the accuracy, I think you can also cast much quicker, like recast, than with a spinning reel. When you're reeling in a spinning reel, you see a fish, you want to go recast to it. Sometimes you fumble around opening the bail and getting the line, and your line gets stuck on your finger or around the bail. Baitcaster, you just push the button, flip that lure to that fish.
Well, let's talk about that, Mark. Let's talk about the gear ratios as well.
Yeah, and this is where our industry is drastically changing. Back in the day, it was really, really slow gear ratios. So the 4.7 to 5-to-1 ratios were kind of like the standard back in the day. And then the 6-to-1 gear ratios kind of overtook the market. And then it was 7-to-1s. Now they're making bait casters up to 10-to-1. So you're pulling in anywhere between 28 to 52 inches of line on a handle crank. I mean, some of the stuff is just blazing fast.
Versus what on a spinning?
Most spinning are going to be 5-to-1. Gear ratios is a standard in the industry. And then most of your high gears are going to be the 6-to-1 base. It's very rare, and there are some, there's some that are 8-to-1 gear ratios out there. But I would say that 95% of the market is a 5-to-1, 6-to-1 kind of a base market. And when I say 6-to-1, I mean, 6.2 to 1, 6.5 to 1. It's 6 something to 1.
And just to make sure that everybody listening and us are on the same page. So the ratio means that for one turn of the handle, if it's a 6.3 to 1, one turn of the handle would rotate the spool 6.3 times.
That's correct.
And so spinning, you're saying that most spinning reels have a 5-ish to 1, and then bait casting have a 7 to 10-ish.
The most popular bait caster I would say on the market right now is probably a 7-to-1. It's a pretty universal speed now. So for every one handle crank, it's 7 revolutions of the spool. And I would say that most of your lighter platform spinning reels, including, the Daiwa Fuego, most of those are in that 6-to-1 platform now. And then once you get out of that 4,000 class and go larger, that's when you'll get into the 5-to-1 base now.
And so the diameter, so the actual ratio doesn't really control the amount of line. Like we can't, is it okay? Like, should we compare the actual amount of line that comes in? Is that like the more important? Because like this little reel, like I don't know what this is. It's probably a 7-to-1. It's bait casting. This spool is much smaller than my spinning reel spool. Ooh. So like if I had like a 6-to-1 spinning rod or 6-to-1 reel on my spinning, and this was a 7-to-1, I would be willing to bet that my spinning reel would actually retrieve more line than this per crank, given the difference in diameter of the spool. Does that make sense?
Yes. So now we're getting to the engineering side. So the spool the armature of the actual spool is going to make a difference, of course. So that being number one, but, number two, though, your long handle crank with the spinning reel was a much larger rotation than a small handle crank on a bait casting. So yes, in essence, it is based on inches per turn, But how many more turns can you do doing this versus doing this? And of course, I'm exaggerating that motion, but in essence, that's what it is.
And do reels? I know all reels have the 6-to-1, 6.2-to-1, whatever it is. Do they also show how many inches of line come in per turn?
Yes.
So that is more okay. Cool. That'll be what I'd be more interested in.
Yeah.
Instead of comparing the spinning reel to the baitcaster, what I found, I did a video on this, I think a week ago, prior to this video, about gear ratios, and that the Shimano Stratic, the FL, has the 3000 has a gear ratio of 6.4-to-1, and I think it brings in 38 inches of line or something like that. Then the 5000 size has a lower gear ratio and brings in more line
because the spool's bigger.
Yeah. The spool. Yeah.
So if you're comparing like one size spinning reel to another, I think the spool size definitely plays a role.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
All right, so sounds like spinning wins there. Let's go to drag systems. Drag systems, everybody. Drag systems for 200.
Mark's jaw just dropped when you made that.
Yeah, I'm about to say, hold on. I don't call that a win at all.
Yeah, so on the actual amount of turns, just to clarify Mark's claim that the amount of effort it takes to turn a spinning reel handle is going to wear somebody out.
Let me use my strong hand.
Yeah. So here are the two. Oh, dang it. Let me get this thing back up. So a spinning reel versus a bait casting reel. The bait casting is a little bit smaller, but it's maybe like 20%, 30% on an aggressive claim. We're not talking a lot of effort more to twist a spinning rod.
Hey, this is like the 10-pound diameter braid in a 15. That extra 10 and 20% means something, all right? That's bait casting.
Gregory Ramco says RuPaul drag systems. He's back. Gregory's back. Charles has got some great points on that as well. That's funny. So let's do move over to drag. Obviously, I think the guys who are used to using spinning, they like the audible sound of it. Like hearing that drag go out. Don't really have that. Maybe there are some that have that on casting. What are your thoughts there, Mark, Tony, Wyatt? Obviously you got sound, and then you have which one's actually more powerful? Mark's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yes.
I like the sound of drag.
So
who wouldn't, right? People have that as their phone, their ringtone.
No,
screaming out.
The sound means nothing to me, number one. But number two,
you mean except winning in life? That's called winning, dude.
The sound comes into play to tell you to stop reeling.
That's right. Now, the two reels that Luke just held up, okay, talking about that smaller reel, that bait casting reel is a 22 to 25 pound class drag system on that bait caster. The same as the larger spinning reel. So,
but this spinning reel has 20 pounds as well.
That's what I just said. I gave it an even, Steven. But look how much larger, though, that spinning reel is compared to the bait caster. Small design, light, palmable. Have I sold you yet, Luke?
No, I haven't. I already bought one, so you don't have to sell me one. But I'm still not sold on it being more of it helping me catch more fish yet. Unless I'm pitching, unless I'm doing like close target pitching, like underhand pitching where the control is everything. And like we fished with Mike Iaconelli, that guy can cast better. And he was using spinning gear for the most part. But when doing short casts, I can understand, where a quick pitch to get right on a fish or right on a hole will be good. But I do mostly long, shallow water, long casts. And I'm just not sold. I just haven't yet personally found the benefit of bait casting, and which is why I switched over. Like I I finally switched over once I got totally owned by Chip Tharp, one of my friend I met in college. I remember it to this day. I went out with him and his dad, and I thought I was a pretty good fisherman. I took my at that point I had a Shimano. I used to do Abu Garcia everything, and I got a Shimano something. They totally wrecked me. I caught like one fish, and they caught like 15, and they were all casting. We were casting live pilchards, and I couldn't cast it worth a darn. And finally I switched, and then I started putting lures on it. And I was like, man, I'm just casting further. So I've totally switched everything spinning.
With the drag too on baitcasters, baitcaster is almost like a winch, and you're using heavier lines. So you can lock down that drag and, pull fish out of structure and just crank down. You can't do that with a spinning reel. Like you can't lock down the drag and just crank and pull fish out of structure. You have to, pull back on your rod, reel in the slack, pull back. So I think that's another benefit of the baitcaster over spinning.
So I think there we will give the casting a point, right, for just overall power, which is why the bass guys, are doing it. You rip it out of anything. It might even cut through steel. I don't know.
And you can cast you can cast thicker line farther with bait casting. I think that's a total win on the bait casting side. With all else being equal.
But I think, and someone mentioned earlier, areas like, Tampa Bay Loop, where we spend a lot of time, I think that's meant for spinning in general, right? Because you are going to be casting, if you're a live bait guy or girl, you're casting lighter live baits in many cases. It's not like you're there with Lunker Dog casting 12-inch hog legs all the time. And also, too, we're all about distance, right? I mean, we're trying to get as far away from that mangrove line or whatever that piece of structure is to make really, really long casts, which is why even Mike Iaconelli, the dude brought like 15 rods, and 80% of the time he was using spinning for that same reason.
And we were skipping under docks too. I mean, the skipping part is, I think, a big win for the spinning. I don't know. What do you use bait casting at all?
I've played with bait casting before in both saltwater and freshwater, and I know we're on the topic of drag systems. So one thing that I actually do prefer for the bait casting side is if you're fighting a fish and you've got a spinning reel, and I experienced this yesterday, if you need to adjust your drag on a spinning reel, you have to take your hand off of the reel handle. So that could possibly put slack in your line, and you need to keep that line taut if you're fighting a fish. So if with the bait caster, you can adjust it, as you're fighting a fish with one hand. So you've got your hand on the reel with the bait caster, cranking in, keeping the line tight, and you can play with the drag as it's a star drag on most bait casting reels on the right hand side. I mean, I'm a left-handed fisherman, so I'm holding the rod and I'm fighting the fish. I can, adjust the drag as we're going. I lost a fish yesterday on spinning tackle. I was heading towards some oysters, and I wanted to crank down on the drag to try and pull it away from that area. I had to take my hand off of the reel. The fish was continuing to, move, and I wasn't able to keep that tautness in my line. So that's one thing I would 100% give to the bait caster is you can, adjust your drag while you're fighting. But that would be really the only thing. I know that, you can wench fish out. I find that the drag is a lot smoother on spin casting reels though. If my drag's really tight and a fish starts ripping, most reels that I've not used any of, Mark's really high-end bait casting reels. Most of my spinning reels, have a very, very smooth drag and a quick, snap or run from a fish. I feel is better handled by the spinning reels drag. That's just my personal opinion in the spinning reels versus the bait casting reels that I've used.
We'll give a half point to bait casting reels there, because that also means you don't have to put your purse down while you're fighting a fish with your bait caster. So half point there, Mark. Half point.
Yeah, Luke, let me ask you a question. On your Fuego combo in front of you right now, what is your rod rating on that rod and reel combo?
Rod rating.
And number two, did it come with a purse with purchase?
No, and I'm still waiting on it. I haven't received the purse yet. I'm getting the hair long enough for it, rod is 6 to 12 pounds, the one that I'm using with it, and I use 10 pound braid, so right in the sweet spot.
Okay, so perfect. So that lure rating on that rod, then let me ask you this question, and this is another thing that I love about bait casting. Imagine using a lure at the bottom of the spectrum on that lure rating on that rod, and then a lure at the high end spectrum of that rod rating. Okay. So now you're using, what is it rated up to, a half ounce?
This one is a 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce.
Okay. So imagine using a 3/4 ounce lure on that rod.
Launching it.
Okay. Launching it, but very, very poor action. It's going to feel like you have a cinder block coming through the water because it's so heavy on that rod and reel combo.
It's debatable.
Let me use my strong hand.
The bait casting combo.
Sounds like a personal problem there, Mark.
The range in lure casting and performance is wider on a bait casting.
I don't know. So potentially. So I'm looking at the rod that the Baitcaster's on. So that was going to be your next question.
Yes.
So lure weight, 1/4 to 3/4 pounds.
Yes, but I want you to use a 3/4 ounce lure, and you tell me if you have the same fatigue on a spinning that you would have on the bait casting. And that bait casting will handle the 3/4 much better than the spinning will handle the 3/4.
Have you seen Luke's forearms are like the size of his thighs? He doesn't have fatigue.
Is it the weight? I mean, is like if a 3/4 ounce plug would be like a spinner bait, I like something like a spinner bait with a lot of resistance like that. Yeah, 100% bait. Those are a pain to fish with spinning.
That's right.
So I agree with that. I think.
Yeah. So the diving baits like a 3/4 ounce rattle trap, anything with a lip design to it. You know, some of the stuff that we would use on our end, it's a whole different ball game using a bait caster versus spinning.
Yeah, I want to argue with that one. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm on the fence about. I mean, we can have another one of these calls about rods, but just talking to rod builders, they can put whatever rating on a rod they want to. So I don't know if you match the right rod to the spinning reel, it could still do the same as a bait caster, in my opinion.
Try it out with a lip plug. I'm telling you. If you have a crankbait, Tony, or if you have, and I'm not talking about like a swim bait because, again, there's no resistance coming through the water, but you use a half ounce lip plug or a spinner bait, feel the difference in pressure.
Yeah, Mark, I completely
length of the rod
agree.
come into play too.
Same rod rating, though. And you are correct, though, Tony. The rod manufacturers, it's a disaster with lure rating and line rate. I mean, it's a disaster.
Yeah. So I'm saying if you don't pay attention to those rod ratings and pick like a more stout rod, like I just got a new rod from Century. It's a weapon and it's rated for 3/4 ounce to 2.5 ounce. And I've thrown a 1/16 ounce hook with a Slam Shady on there, and outcasted my friend who was using a regular rod rated for like 1/4 to half ounce or whatever it may be. And then I also used it to throw 2 ounce bucktail jigs, and it worked just fine. So I think it really comes down to
a custom black Pelican, baby.
Yes, sir.
I saw Brandon chime in on here.
Might have to get him on the next call about rods.
Casting rod. Yeah, I mean, it all obviously ties in. Let's move over to one thing that I think prevents so many people from using it, and we've all had it. If you've done any amount of fishing with a bait casting reel, is the bird's nest. Obviously, with spinning, you get line twist and wind knots. Let's talk about the pros and the cons. What happens more often? And obviously that's going to depend on some skill level as well. But to me, it always seems like even just last week, we were down in the Everglades, or I guess a week and a half now, and we started off, or at least I did that first day using a bait caster. And like as soon as all of a sudden we knew exactly where the fish were, I wanted to make that perfect cast like real quick, and I get a freaking bird's nest. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me! It always happens at the worst time. Whereas I seem to rarely get massive wind knots in my spinning gear. So what are your thoughts, Mark, Tony, Wyatt, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, bait casting reels, I've brought them with me. I got a really bad wind knot, and the reel is done for the day. I can't get the knot out, and if I do, I'm taking out almost half the line. So I don't have that problem with spinning reels.
Ooh,
Anybody else?
like
Anybody else?
Point
Yeah,
two.
I'll give you my take. Number one, and y'all have made, I can't tell you how many videos, Luke and Joe, how many times y'all have trolled swim bait behind the boat on the flats boat. Okay. So trolling as a method of fishing, you can't tell me that that's not putting line twists that will hurt your spinning.
How was it?
So trolling lures behind your boat, it's more conducive and a better opportunity with a bait caster than spinning because of that natural line twist that it's putting on your line. So when it's twisting your lure, okay, and it's still coming on to your bait casting, it's going to come off the same way versus trying to uncoil from the spool.
I actually prefer to rig it correctly where it doesn't do the twisting and helicoptering.
Yeah, I mean,
It shouldn't be twisting.
It depends on what you're trolling. If you're trolling a spoon, yeah, I was trolling a spoon, definitely. But I don't troll spoons just because of that. I've been trolling lately. I've only been trolling the Slam Shady. So like a Slam Shady on a jig head, that does zero twisting, and so there's no problem.
Okay.
Hey, Lauren.
To us, the diving baits and surface, pelagic baits, because it's on the surface, that's what's causing the twist. And you cannot use spinning. Well, you can use spinning trolling, but 99% of the people do not, because as you're surface trolling a bait, and chugging a bait on the surface, it's a disaster with spinning gear. Disaster.
Wouldn't the twist happen with bait casting now?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it twists because the line comes off on a straight method versus an uncoiling method.
I don't know. I'll be curious to test that one out.
That's a point for bait casting.
If you're trolling a spoon and you're going too fast and it's twisting on one way nonstop, then
Wyatt,
that's a quarter
Wyatt, did
point.
you ever fish up in Tennessee, Wyatt, whenever you moved up there?
Oh yeah, and it was all bait casters. That's the thing about bait casters is I feel like they're great for bass fishermen because you can make those casts that you can say they're more precise than a spinning reel. My personal experience, you use spinning reel long enough, you're comfortable with the rod, you can make the exact same cast. But I think a lot of that deals with exactly what you were saying earlier on spinnerbaits. Spinnerbaits are very popular up in Tennessee. And I will 100% give the point to, bait casters when it comes to spinnerbaits. But I stopped using bait casters just because of the bird's nest. And, I got very proficient with bait casters. I used them for a very long time. But there's no reason, I think, to give yourself an opportunity to make a mistake, especially with artificial lures. Our number one goal is to cast it as far as possible and to cover as much ground as possible in areas that we may not be familiar with or we're searching for fish. That's the only way you can guarantee you're going to catch more fish is making the furthest cast possible with the lightest line you can and covering as much ground. That's how you're going to catch more fish. So, with bait casters, the further you try to cast and the more power you try to load in to, a toss, if you don't have that tension set right on the spool or you're not familiar with how to do that, you've got a much higher propensity to get a bird's nest. So that alone, I think, you're just leaving room for mistakes that are on your part or just, there could be an issue with the way your line was spooled. So I just don't want to give myself the ability to, make a mistake. I'm out there to make all my casts as accurate as possible and for as far as I can throw it. So I think in this category, for sure, the bird's nest is a huge con. And especially, with our goal with artificial lures, casting as far as you can, it's just going to increase the likelihood of bird's nesting.
Yeah, and I have I saw Pat Ogletree's on, and he said that he uses bait casters on hard baits, spinning for everything else. And I know Pat's been doing a ton of top water plugs lately. And so, Pat, if you're still watching, if you could please let me know if you've tried spinning. Because earlier on, I've been using top water a lot lately, and I've been throwing this big one. The reason why I stepped off, I wanted to weigh it. This was coming in at a little bit over an ounce, which is outside of the range on both my spinning and the bait casting. and I feel like I'm casting, or I don't feel like I'm casting. I am 100% casting this a significant amount further with my spinning setup compared to my bait casting. So I'm curious if you've tried the heavier lures on that you're using with your bait casting with a spinning. Curious to know. Could just be me. It could just be the fact that I've been using spinning for the last 10 years, and I just recently got back to bait casting. Probably a part of the factor.
Luke, let me ask you this. Whenever you're making a cast with your spinning gear, after you make a hard cast on an open flat, what is your next step? Do you close your bail manually and then grab your line and come tight with it before you start your retrieve?
I high five the air.
Yeah, and I'm still worn out from all that manual effort. So yes, but the reason why I just think, at least my casting style, like I spend very little effort, and like I have to do way more effort and more motion to cast the bait casting, because with spinning I literally just have my hands close together and just pull one. I pull one back and the other one forward, and like I literally don't even move. Like that's it. It goes from there to there, and that's my cast. Whereas bait casting, I have to make a longer swing. So even though I am manually flipping over the bail at the end of it, like I'm no more winded one way or the other, I guess is my overall point.
Well, I didn't mean on the winded, but why are you doing that?
Just to make sure I don't have any wind knots.
Okay. So back to Wyatt's reasoning about the bait casting with backlashes and less wind. You are actually having to compensate not having to make wind knots on spinning gear, where it doesn't have to be that way. Once you set it, you can forget it on my side.
Set what? Talk about the spool ratio?
The casting controls.
Oh, if you said that if you can launch it without getting a backlash, you're going to cast so much further with spinning gear. It's not even be close.
So, what would you rather come home to your girlfriend or spouse and say, "Honey, look at this beautiful thumb, all these snook I caught with my spinning," or would you rather go and say, "Honey, look at all these little line gashes I got from my baitcaster. Just got my thumb burned all up."
Yeah, we call that fish. We don't call that line burn. That's fish burn.
Line burn, boy.
Or your thumb's green or yellow.
from the braid. You're sporting your braid on your thumb now.
So Gregory Ramco, he said, where'd it go? Something about being harder to cast on a kayak with a baitcaster. I agree. I noticed that my cast is different as far as how I cast with a baitcaster compared to a spinning reel. Spinning reel, I can cast to the side, especially if I have rods behind me. I like to cast to the side. I have smacked more rods behind me using a baitcaster than any spinning reel, just because I'm mainly casting overhand or whatever it's called, straight overhead, and it's harder for me to cast to the side with a baitcaster. I also reel with the opposite hand. Like I'll cast one side, then I have to switch the baitcaster over to the other hand after I make my cast.
Mark, how do you cast a baitcaster?
I retrieve everything spinning and bait casting from the right hand side.
No, I mean, how are you casting? Are you doing the little side, like CA always does, a quick little side whip? Or are you going over?
It just really depends on how I'm fishing. I can flip underhand, I can side mount, I can go over the top,
Behind the back?
If I tried. So it just really depends on the method of fishing.
Yeah, and Pat responded back, and thanks, Pat. And so he said yes for both. So he has used the spinning and bait casting, and I know he's done a lot of spinning and a lot of bait casting, and he he has found that the bait casting is better for the plugs. So I will definitely make a point to keep doing it. It could just be the fact that I just haven't put nearly as much time in the last 5 years with spinning than bait casting. So yeah, thanks for the input.
How about fish fighting?
Yeah, and that's what I was about to get to. Back in Texas and Louisiana market, keep in mind too, Luke, a lot of the smaller spinning reels back in the day, they just didn't have drags. An average drag back then was 8-pound class drag systems. So growing up in Texas and Louisiana, like I did, the spinning reels, the old Calcutta reels, the old Abu Garcia reels, you were talking substantial drag systems back in the day. And I think that's a big part of why, Texas and Louisiana still uses a lot of bait casters, is because they've been around forever. They've always had strong drags. And that's, I would say in the last 15 years, that spinning finally has caught up to the bait casting market when it comes to the strength of the product.
And that plus the braid, I guess the advent of braid, in my opinion, that was the biggest game changer for me. Switching from bait casting to spinning, as you put a light braid on there, it's just so small and it casts just so much further. And more importantly, it actually doesn't cast that much further than brand new mono. I did a test on 10-pound braid versus 10-pound mono, all else being equal. The braid won by like 2%. It was really close, but that mono gets all that memory really fast. And so after like a month or two, it's not even close. Like in braid, I leave braid on for sometimes, multiple years. It just lasts so long and it stays nimble, where you can cast it equally good on day 600 than you can on day 1. So I don't know. I'm still diehard spinning, but I will continue to use this baitcaster and see.
Let's talk cost for both the combination of rod and reel. What obviously there's a massive spectrum, but in terms of having a legit something that, Mark, you would go out on the boat with and be confident and say, hey, this is my go-to. What are the cost differences?
I don't know that there are any. The product that Luke has in his hand right now is what I consider to be my workhorse, and that's kind of like my bottom end product, the one that he has there. And that's that $150, $165 platform reel. Most of my reels on the competitive side are the grade above the one that he has. And now you're in that $200 market. So, you're at the same price points of what, the Stratics and the Ballistics and all those of the world are. So price point wise, I don't find it to be any different.
Okay. Point to spinning then.
But if you buy a cheap, like a $50 to $100 bait caster, are you worried about, how you can adjust it? Is it going to adjust as well as a $200 reel? Like, you don't have to worry about that with spinning reels. You could buy a $100 reel. It's going to cast the same as a $200 reel. Do you have to worry about that with bait casters?
Well, let's compare a $50 bait caster to a $50 spinning reel. That all things considered equal with price, I still feel like the quality and the bang for the buck is still going to be better with a bait casting reel than it is with a $50 spinning reel. You're getting into a lot of really, really cheap parts at that. But I think the $100 price spectrum is where it then starts to equal out in quality standards all the way up through. But under 100, I still feel that bait casters, they offer better quality internal components than what the internals are on a spinning.
They're a little tougher to maintain, though, aren't they?
What's that?
I feel like spinning reels are much easier to take apart and maintain. How are they with bait casters?
Already point to Tony for the glasses and looking smart.
That's all they're there for.
And I'll go ahead and educate, and I'll give 1 point to the spinning world. Ease of taking care of a product, they're the same to me. Once you break them down, you know how to break them down. Everything's the same internally. But, and this is the big but, and this is what I love about being part of Salt Strong, is now we can take the industry, marketing efforts out of this scenario. There is no such thing as a saltwater bait caster, period. Okay. They're being marketed that way. The one that he has in his hand right now, it lists as a saltwater grade bait casting reel. The only thing that makes a bait caster saltwater approved is the paint scheme on the external side of the reel. That's it. There's no sealed bait casters on the market, period. So that's where I think spinning does offer a significant advantage, is the sealed components for the use of saltwater.
So that Daiwa Coastal, that blue one that I have, the baitcaster, that's really just the same as the freshwater, but with different paint.
That's correct. They have what they call a salt guard 2.0. So it doesn't allow the salt to corrode the external framing of that reel. That's all that it is.
Interesting.
Point to spinning.
Yep, point to spinning. All right. Then we have now tabulated with my handy dandy calculator. Let's see. 2 + 6 - 4. Spinning wins. Spinning is the winner, everyone.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just personal preference. Like,
that was a good debate.
Most of our members in Texas, or not, I won't say most, but I'd say probably the majority, or at least close, are bait casting's it. And I think it's a lot about what you grew up with. And just like with casting accuracy, I think it's whatever you use the most, you're going to be able to be most accurate with. Like, I don't think there's any one exact answer, but I'm seeing a lot. I'm looking at the comment feed, and this kind of goes back and forth. I think spinning has a little bit of advantage on the comment feed, but it's close.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It comes down to experience, technique, all that comes into play.
But for those diehard bait casting people, like I used to be, if you get a chance when you're fishing with somebody who's using a small spinning rod with 10-pound line and a good fast action rod, you give it a try, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. That's what made me finally make the switch, is getting owned by some friends on the water, and I just could clearly see how much easier they were casting those lighter baits. And I finally made the switch, and it went from the point that I thought spinning tackle was for total newbies and chumps, and the bait caster were for real fishermen, and they do have some situations where they really are effective.
Cool. Well, guys, this has been awesome. We're hitting the hour. If you don't already know this, part of one of the main benefits of being part of the Insider Club is we have now 20% off all products, and some really, really big changes coming soon in terms of some new product offerings. There's been a lot of craziness. I got a couple emails from a few of you insiders last night about just a lot of things out of stock. This is not just a Salt Strong shop issue. This is a national issue with COVID. We're all kind of feeling the pain from that. These manufacturers have, most of them all had to shut down for a minimum of 2 weeks, some over a month. And then you had this just like ripple effect from all these different plants around the world were having issues. Everything, just the supply chain just shut down for a little while. And so good news is it looks like it seems to be kicking back up, Mark, right? And it looks like it'll be a awesome summer, and our shop page is going to be super robust. And just one more reason to join the Insider Club. I saw in one of the recent reports, the average angler saltwater angler is spending around $1,600, like $1,590 or something per year, just on tackle and equipment. That does not include boats and kayaks. That's just going in and buying rods, reels, lures, line, etc. And you do the math, 20% off. It's a lot of savings. And then with the shipping thing too, that's going to be another big change. You'll notice as insiders, stuff is going to be going out a whole lot faster. And a whole more, much more cost efficient as well. We've because we're doing so much volume now with the post office, we've figured out some great ways to save money with them, which goes just right back to you. We don't make money on shipping, so we get to pass all those savings on to you. So it's going to be super quick. We're trying to be Amazon quick, right? Like get it out next day and boom, have it there, priority or first class, super fast. And of course, at a really low cost. So know that all that is happening as we are speaking. So thank you guys for all the support. This has been fun. Obviously, these are friendly and also educational and a little entertaining as well. And we love your feedback. If you're watching the replay or if you're listening to this on the podcast or the YouTuber, let us know any questions you have. We plan on doing these, every week, every other week, however often you guys want us to talk about some topic, and we might even bring some other guests on. is need be. But this was fun. I do think that spinning definitely won according to my calculator. But then again, Mark probably has a different calculator. It's kind of like politics, right? Maybe we should talk about politics. That'd be a real fun one.
That's a terrible idea.
Kidding.
And
guys,
glad to see Gregory's feeling better. He's leaving some witty remarks again. So He's back in action. He's said, back. "Spin me right round, baby, right round," was his last comment. So he's back in
action. Good times. All right, gents. It was a blast. Everyone, go check out saltstrong.com. Join us in the club where we have all kinds of fun doing stuff like this every week behind the scenes. If you like what we do on YouTube and we do on the podcast, that's our free stuff. The majority of stuff that we do is over 1,000 videos and real-time, 10,000+ real-time fishing reports, etc. All there in our Insider Club. So we are out. We will talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was passed down to me from the days of old. Find us on the water if there